Hi, I'm Jennifer Campbell, creator and host of the Systemic Leadership Summit. Welcome to this session. And today we'll be talking about a special approach towards seeing and reading systems and how to do this through the process of visualization. Our guest for today has extensive experience in facilitating this visualization process in organizations and to map out what's going on in our living human systems. We also create immense value from the visualization process. And my guest today is here to explain just that. And his name is Mathias Weitbrecht. Mathias is a European pioneer in the field of visual facilitation. Since 2005, he's been facilitating change and supporting strategic transformation through a unique combination of visuals and organization development. Additionally, he has developed products, business models, and also teams, always aligned with a strong purpose-driven approach. Mathias is the founder and CEO of Visual Facilitators with a team of 25 visual strategists, graphic recorders, and facilitators. He is especially skilled in also visualizing the intangible, more subtle, or energetic realities as they appear throughout systems. Mathias is the author of the book Co-Create das Visualisierungsbuch, in English, Co-Create the Visualization Book. And he's here today with us. A very warm welcome to you, Mathias. Thanks for being with us in the Systemic Leadership Summit.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here and talk to you. Thank you, Jennifer.
Well, let's just dive in. And what I'd like to start off with is, what is your connection with the systemic as an approach to leadership or supporting organizations in their change endeavors?
Yeah, I mean, it's manifold because I do what I do is I go into groups. I can work with anybody who has meetings.
Yeah.
Basically anybody, and create value in the meetings by basically looking at what's in the room, what's between the lines, what's the system that I read. And then basically what I do is a listening practice. Yeah, I listen and then I map it onto the wall so that the group can see it, and this creates immediate value and interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that a lot of times with leaders, of course, like board members and so on.
Yeah. So you can do this with anyone, but also, of course, with leaders in their boards.
Sure.
And so how did this start out for you? How did you get into this type of work?
Like many, I reinvented myself a couple of times in my life. And as so I did at the end of 2004. I was working as an information architect before. But that's a very tech job, and it was just too techy for me. I wanted to work with the potential of people and organizations, and so I approached a friend who was in organizational development, and we started working together. And I just pulled out the visualization skills and created something unique that has now been developing to what I do today.
Yes. So this is interesting route that you take there. There's so many different approaches or ways or maps to get into this type of work, the work of the systemic and supporting change and progress in organizations. And this was yours. And so when did you start calling it the visualization as a way of working or a strategy? When did it become something official for you in your experience?
Pretty soon after the date we just mentioned, early 2005. And actually, the strategy work was one of the first big projects that I followed. And then it was a lot of graphic recording, what's can be seen on conferences and so on. But then more and more the strategy work picked up again, and the skills associated to it and the value created through this. More and more until it's like basically a main focus today.
Yeah. And so earlier you said you reinvented yourself and you evolved into the work that you do today with the visualization. But usually when you reinvent yourself, it's not just moving away from something in your situation that was too techy, but there was also
Yeah.
something that fueled that change for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was observing what's going on in the world and shifts ahead, and they touched me and called me in a way. I mean, I wanted to create like basically not be an observer of what's happening in the world. Oh, this is interesting. This changes, and this system changes. Interesting, but to be a contributor to it.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to co-create it and do something about it, and not just watch it from the outside. Because I see these people in some client organizations.
Yeah.
It's now a little better, but a couple of years ago we had these organizations in certain industries, and some senior people said, "Oh, it'll not be so bad, and it's after my retirement anyway." So this voice, and that's not me at all,
Mm-hmm.
because I'd like to be close and in service to something larger.
Yeah. And so there was this calling from the outside of what you saw, and you no longer wanted to be an observer. And if you say, I wanted to contribute to something bigger, what is it exactly that you want to contribute to? Do you have more framing of your purpose?
Yeah, I would say that today's challenges can be addressed by multidisciplinary approaches. I'm sure you have that in other speakers of the summit, but then also through integrating various perspectives. So to take multiple truths that coexist at the same time and to integrate them into a larger picture. Now, there's one person saying this, or one system saying this, and another one saying that, and they're all right, but partial. And then you integrate that and basically create a map of that new interaction or networking or nested way of looking at things. And well, I just do that on paper. Imagine behind me is a huge wall of paper, and I take a marker, and while we speak, I map what we're talking about. And this would immediately create value. You would understand better what I say because it's happening in real time and it's interacting with us in the conversation. So I do that in the room when there are conversations that matter.
Yeah. So actually you're saying, and this really speaks to me also, what you said about why you do this, and that is there's a diversity of viewpoints, and what you do with the mapping is that you connect them into, or help the process of connecting them into the bigger picture.
Yeah, and it's also to tap into the unknown or the unseen. Everything below the surface of the iceberg. There's a lot in systems. I mean, the unconscious material and the blind spots we have, or people or whole departments have, and things like that. I'm trying, as I said earlier, it's a listening practice. It's also a sensing practice. So before I put anything down, I'm really in this listening mode and in this reading the system mode. Like, I give you an example. If I could not go into a conversation and start immediately mapping out things because I don't know where things go. The first point that was mentioned by somebody in the group might not be the most valuable one, or the one that the whole group or direction follows. So I have to read and put things together, and even if I'm in a 2-day event, still remember, there was this little detail on day 1 in the morning, and I pull it out again in order to add it or network it or whatever. Yeah. So this is like, as I said, a listening practice, which again has various levels deep of listening capabilities. It's not the words, but it's then the meaning making, the sense making, maybe the going into a future transfer or things like that. There are various levels of listening.
Wow. So I would love to hear more about that in a minute. But first, I'm stuck on the part where you say the first thing that's mentioned in the group may not be the actual issue or the actual space to go. And sometimes deeper and deeper levels of listening are required. And I'm just wondering, if you work with a board or a group of leaders, what is it that you do or can do to actually access those deeper levels? Because I at least from my experience when working with leaders, a number of things need to happen before the system allows you to actually go there. So how do you present this, or what are the benefits that you share with leaders before you're actually in this process, so that they are able to open up their system?
Yeah, it's there can be two ways of doing this. It's one can be a more passive role where I'm just in the room in a way documenting. But then this is so unusual, and most have not seen this. So I'm just like the fool in the room or the jester on the court, somebody who is allowed to do something. But then I try to be oriented with the goals on the objectives of the meeting. Why is this happening? Why are they actually meeting? They're not meeting just to talk, but there's usually a higher level or a meta level of the purpose why this group meets. So I need to know that, and then it's guiding me. And actually, I use a lot of intuition, and I use a lot of tapping into the unknown and having trust with the unknown, whatever emerges, and to sense the potential where the group maybe wants to be. And that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. And then this appears magically on the wall, and they see it, maybe very unconsciously, but it reflects in direct interaction back onto the group. And thus, it creates a better conversation.
Right.
So that's the passive way. But then I have the facilitative way, the more active way, where I interact with the group. I ask them questions. I ask them really good questions, well-crafted questions, not questions that can be answered with yes and no, but I really take them to something and visualize that in real time. And that is like if we were in a group, in a circle sitting, and the board would be, my paper would be one of the participants, and it's immediately speaking to the group. So there are these various ways and to do this visual facilitation work.
Right.
I can even take the people and interact with them, have them take a marker and do something. Because if they do that, it's very participatory and it does something to them instead of just sitting there and, let's see what this brings, but they are in. And so I can pull all these strings. You know?
So what you're saying is that the facilitation process that you do, you can do that from a more an outside role or an observing role, and but that feels less natural. Then there is the facilitation where you ask questions and there's interaction. And then there's also where the client is more in the driver's seat, where you give them the pen and they start mapping out things. And all those three different approaches can be part of the facilitating, the visualizing process. But something that I'm aiming towards is, because I'm thinking of leaders who may be watching this session right now and thinking, okay, so why would I want to do that? Because it could be fun and interesting to have someone who visualizes things or dynamics that are in the room. But how is that actually going to benefit us as a group of leaders or a group in a project, or we need to make some decisions?
Maybe I give an example.
Yeah. So what are the benefits for them? Why would they go into such a process?
Yeah, first of all, one thing is important to understand, and that's also a thing I explain to the clients. This work of visual facilitation and systems work with the support of visuals, it's not something that comes from illustration or art or design or something or graphics historically. So this is a process that has been developed in the early 70s, and it comes from organizational development, and it comes from facilitation and working with groups. Why? Just to create, as I said, better conversations and better results in meetings in a world that's more and more complex, and thus create really something new. And this is what basically how this is being positioned and sold, and how it creates value, and what we hear as a feedback from the groups after that. So I'm not in the room as an artist, although it looks like art and it's fun and so on, but it's not, an artist, it's usually to create something timeless. It's not the point here, because it might be that 1 second where that's one metaphor is on the wall and it changes everything. Or it's about the artist to show a talent. No, it's not about me at all. It's about the purpose that's happening in the group, and it sits in the middle of people being together. Or a whole organization, sometimes a visual touches thousands and thousands of people. Maybe just, as I said, I give an example in a minute. So this is where this comes from historically. There was this one insurance company, and they had as usually they have a change project and something to be transformed and changed. And they started with a small pilot group, and then this client had me in the room to do this passive, as I said, graphic recording, just to document their meeting. Mm-hmm. And then they took this result, which already created value in the room, to the larger circle that was in charge of the transformation process. And then again, a second round was done with a larger group to create another version of this. And it became, from a graphic recording, a meeting minutes, so to speak, became a strategy visual.
Okay.
And then that again touched more people. At that point, it was a couple of hundreds already, like 300 or so. And then it was like a prototype. I took it from version 2.5, 0.5, 2.6, like a version. It became better the more people were there. So we were looking at the people as intelligent and contributors to this. So they are not something, hey, this is it, look at it, that's how we do it. No, we were asking for feedback and involving them. So it touched a lot of people and had definitely impact. And then at the end, when it was to be rolled out to thousands, we created an explanatory video, like these hand-sketched videos that you online sometimes. And that was the means of communication to take a visualized strategy that has been co-created by many, many people to the whole staff. So that's an example how this could look like, and usually it's different in other projects, but it's from very tiny to touching the whole system and having impact.
So what I hear in and how you describe this is that it starts with a small core, the pilot group, and then it's more and more people get involved, so that there's the co-creation, which is also part of the title of your book, and that the visualization is not static. So it's an ever evolving visualized awareness of what's going on, or of a strategy in terms of where do we want to move with our organization. And so it becomes something that evolves with the 0.5 and then a 0.6. So it's like more and more of the organization becomes aware of where it finds itself and where it's heading with the help of this visualization process. So that's what I hear from you.
Yeah, right. I would maybe introduce the term resonance, because it creates a resonance in the field of the organization. And the field is not only the individuals there, but it's more also everything that maps it together, that the system, so to speak. It creates a resonance effect there, but not through me putting something there and this is it, look at this is it. No, by basically, a colleague of mine used the term, I help people see what they mean. So I take what's already there, including the future potential or the transformation objectives, and map that and make it visible. So the intangible and the non-visible, that's always there, and that's maybe the larger part of reality anyway, beyond the gross world, I'm making that visible along with my team, and we are really, it's a very fulfilling job, I can tell you, because it creates this immediate effect in the room in that split second when I use the right metaphor. And again, it's listening, because people tend to use these images and pictures in their language a lot.
So what you actually do then is create these aha moments of so this is what we're doing.
Say magic moments.
Magic moments.
That's what I say.
Is that what makes it so fulfilling for you to do those sudden moments of magic, of insight, of awareness, of seeing what was already there.
It happens. It's not plannable, but it's. I mean, I have to have a lot of skill set embodied and in place in the room to be available and in service to what might emerge and what's anyway on the table and still invisible for the group, or for that system. And that is really something. I make myself available, and then I create whatever I create, again, as I said, with a lot of intuition. Sometimes I don't know. There's this, I'm well prepared, but I have no idea how the blank paper in the morning will look in the evening.
Yeah.
And so it is basically also, it's not drawing skills, the main skill, but it's this listening, the systems reading, this pattern recognition, and the art of asking questions. And then, of course, it's courage. I mean, I need to put down the foot where there is nothing yet, a ground that only manifests in the moment I put down my foot. Yeah. So that's how I navigate and again, do my best to create value.
Yeah. So it's like, it reminds me of one of the earlier conversations I had for the Systemic Leadership Summit in terms of, for example, what you need to do when you want to hold space, or what I hear you describe is that you are actually like a vessel or a means to an end, where you empty yourself, even though you bring a lot of skill and you bring a lot of intuition, but actually you empty yourself so that whatever comes to you can go through you and then go through your hands and onto the paper.
Well put. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So this requires a number of things, and that is the listening and the courage to be in the space of the unknown, not knowing what the paper will look at the end of the day, but also to take on whatever comes to you when you sit with the client in the room, and be perceptive, or be able to catch what they are actually saying, because sometimes they may articulate things that require a lot of reading between the lines or listening between the lines. So could you point more in that direction in terms of, for example, just now you said the images they sometimes use are in the language. Say they use particular metaphors or words that then can be transformed into the metaphor. What are other things that you do to listen between the lines?
Yeah, what do I do? But basically, it's while a lot in the corporate world is, in the way we talk about things and look at things, they are very linear. There's A and B and C. Take for example a PowerPoint. It's like there's only one way through: slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, and so on. But that's not how the world is. So immediately when I use the mapping approach and networking things and allowing multiple ways of entry, I cannot only start at slide 1, but if I have this visual behind me and I can start there or there, whatever, everything is valid. I create an amazing, and then to use all my skills to create that map. So where do I start? Do I start in the upper left and work my way to the right and then down like a reading sequence? Or do I start in the middle because I have no idea where things go, in which direction? Or do I even allow myself to leave some white space on the paper and not fill it? Because there's something in the... We had this one example with a strategy of an airline, actually, and they were creating their... one of our team was creating their strategy visual, and there was this huge white space, and there was nothing. And then she said, they said there is nothing can't you fill it up? And she said, no, there's nothing.
No.
And that created a huge aha effect in them. And they realized, oh, something's missing in our setup of the strategy. And it changed everything. Like, even to allow that courage not to fill up everything, but go with what is. So my skill is also to be, as much as I possibly can, in presence with what is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Presence means I'm not resisting what is. There's a conflict in the group. There's something not said. There's my own perception. That's not what it's about here. So to be with what is, it's an art. I will continue to develop this and learn this. You're never done with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that means that as a facilitator, because you call yourself a facilitator, is that it's just that, and not coming up with solutions. It's not filling up the blank space, not about having an opinion about it.
Exactly. I'm not like somebody who comes in and says, do this or do that. No, I'm creating the container, and as we said earlier, the vessel for them to come up with the solution.
Yeah.
And that's the holding the space thing that we said. That's the visual where everything is mapped. That's the art of asking questions, and basically creating a safe space where they can come up and encourage them to come up with because I look at them as the clients, the building blocks for the solutions anyway within them, they're not in me.
Yeah.
So I help them to unearth these hidden treasures and come up with the solution themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you so much for the examples, because I think that will really speak to people in terms of, okay, how could this benefit us, and what does it require from us as well? And that's something that I wanted to ask you more specifically, because I just asked you about you and what you need to bring to the table to fulfill your role in this process. But what does it require of for example, the leaders you work with when they want to really get the value and benefit from this process?
Yeah, basically, they don't need to change so much. They can just be themselves. Mm-hmm. Because what I do is basically can be plugged into anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so they have their conversations or their meetings or whatever they do anyway. Usually, it helps to have a facilitative approach and not like there's one guy downloading stuff onto the others and saying, this is it, no discussion. That's not the approach that I would encourage, but we're more and more moving into this participatory working together anyway everywhere. But they can just do what they do. And sometimes it's not like a long change process, as I said, with the first meeting, the larger group, and then everybody. But sometimes it's only one meeting and they talk a lot, and I take notes and I listen, as I said. But then only in the end of the day, maybe in the last 1.5 hours, I fill the wall with a huge map, and they have something that really benefits them way beyond the event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So you say event, so it can be any type of meeting or gathering then, if I hear you correctly.
It can be anything, yeah, but of course, usually I try. We have in my company, we have all kind of people that go. Some prefer the conferences and actual events, and others I only go to meetings and strategy stuff, like myself and so on. But it can be done with pretty much everything.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. And so could you share with us, because you just said at some point you wait until almost the end of the meeting or the last day, and then everything is on the paper, or at least what you heard and what you experienced and what you can give back to the system in terms of what you listened and what was there and what was not there. And when you sat with what is, and then there's a magic moment where people look at it and things click for them. But what happens next?
Yeah, usually I I let them know and I consult the clients and advise them what to do with the visual,
Okay.
with what just happened. So beyond the actual meeting, for example, to share the visual that everybody has it and gets it, maybe the next day already in the morning in their inbox. So it's still fresh and the buzz is still on, so that they can come back to it and see the highlights of it and connect to it, to their, their whole being. And it's a very holistic thing.
Yes.
What I do. So their whole being connects and again goes into resonance with what happened, and thus takes things further, or even let them know what to do with it beyond that, or give them come back to for details that they can use in other means like PowerPoint and so on, or even there are many ways, but usually it's not over when the meeting is over, but I come back to it and let them know how to really benefit from it.
Yeah, because
it's, so to speak, very embedded in what's happening anyway.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking of the first example that you gave when there was an organization who wanted to implement a change, and where it all started in the pilot group, and that more people were adding to the visualization. And at some point, there was enough momentum in the number of people, and then it was used as a means of communication to then further spread the word and involve people in the change. But then at some point, not much more is added to the visualization, because if you have thousands and thousands of people, then that's difficult to work with. But I can imagine that some of the next steps are about, okay, we want to make sure that our entire system is now involved in this heightened awareness, or these magic moments that we had when we looked at the visualization and how it grew and evolved with us as we were contemplating on the change and trying to shape it. So that's what I mean in terms of next steps. So one is that it can be a means of communication also, or a means of involving the rest of the system. What I also heard you say just now is that the very next day that you connect with them again to see how the visualization can be used further. So, because otherwise I can imagine that people think, oh, we had the visualization, we've had our aha moment, and now it's back to business as usual. So could you speak to that?
There's a whole spectrum of how this is actually working or not working. There are the clients that actually just want it because it's so trendy, and so as an event manager, they have done a good job when they hire the graphic recorder. We have that motivation, but we have those that know this is the seed that might actually spark the transformation or the insight that we wish for, and that we've tried so many times in other change processes, and this is the thing that might trigger it. And it's a very different motivation, and I it's also pre-project. It's my responsibility to listen to that and sense that motivation, consult the client, show them that the potential is actually possible, and then do the best job that I can do.
Yeah. So in other words, what I hear you say is that you meet the client where they are, and some are in the more event and fun area, and some are in a heightened sense of awareness of what this could elicit in their system, and everything in between. And there's some role fluidity for you, in the sense that, okay, I just meet them where they are, and guide them through the process while they evolve with the visualization. Is that how you meant it?
Yes, with a little add-on that if they're not fully aware of the potential that this can bring, I make sure to mention it and show them, hey, we could open a new dimension if we do this, or if we are open to that, or something like that. So I'm sure I create a little pull to the future and to the potential that's actually in the system.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm not only working with the status quo, but to really create like an evolutionary movement wherever possible, with of course with the client in awareness of that.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to pull strings myself without being in touch with the client.
Yeah. And so where I want to move to next is that of course you mentioned a couple of examples also of your work with this visualization facilitation process, and now I want to move into your own company. And so when you look at the process that you do with clients, how did that influence the way you lead your organization and your own leadership? And because you have a big team of 25 people who also do the recording and the facilitating. So what does that look like in your organization?
Yeah, it's like maybe not different than in other organizations. Leadership is a huge challenge, and to hold things together, people together, to evolve the quality, to take care for people, to really see them, to have to build a strategy and a vision for the company, and then embody it, bring it into manifestation. All these challenges are there. So I can start with myself and do my own practice of mapping out, visualizing, and embodying my the strategy and vision I see, involving others, and in a larger circle, and basically use the tools that we basically bring to clients ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's like the full spectrum leadership challenges that you see anywhere else, I would say. Yeah. But so I have my responsibility and what we covered in the first part of this call towards the client and towards there, but I have also the inside one towards the team, and the very inside one in my interiors. Yeah, so all of these are at play and touched by this.
Yeah. And so that means that you must be able to relate really well to your clients who fulfill leadership roles like yourself. And where I want to take this next is, how do you deal with complexity? Because now your team is 25. You may grow bigger. I have no idea. But many leaders face a lot of complexity. Are you able to capture the complexity in the visualizations that you create?
That's what we are being paid for, actually. Yeah. Absolutely. But it starts with my inner attitude. I mean, like very often our world is composed of beliefs, what we think things are. And that again shapes that's our subconscious, so to speak. And that again shapes the outcome or whatever manifests in the world. So to come back to complexity, I don't look at complexity as something dangerous or to be avoided or something. I look at it as a friend. So I invite complexity to a dance, and take it along, because it's there for a reason. It has a meaning. It wants to tell us something. It's a way of looking at things. It's not a dragon to be it's a friend, and I take complexity. That's the belief and the attitude I approach complexity with, just to give something very different than you hear in the world.
Yeah.
And that allows me a different openness and approach and sensing in systems that where you might look at, oh, this is threatening and all these pieces of information, it's so complex. No, maybe not. It's just a belief, and we don't know. So
right.
That's how I.
And so, what do you then do if you have a client, for example, who does have these beliefs and who feels overwhelmed or has difficulty finding the next step in their strategic approach and comes to you and says, Matthias, I need your help because everything is becoming so complex that I don't know exactly what I find in my organization or in its environment so that we can do our strategic planning. So they hold this belief that things are complex, and they do not have the stance that you have, that complexity is a friend and something that you can invite in and work with. So how do you deal with leaders like that?
Just any conversation will already do if I visualize it in real time. Because what they say in basically this linear way of first things first and then something else, and also the usual ways of communication that people think that what has the loudest voice or is just recently, chronologically, a little while ago, seems to be the most important things. Well, maybe not. Maybe the little tiny voice the other day is the crucial factor.
Yeah.
So I invite people to just have a conversation and in a group or one-on-one, and I map it in real time. And then that again that already takes something away from the belief that complexity is to be avoided. But then I invite people. A colleague once said, which I can only emphasize, put your meetings on the wall. So now imagine you have everything that you talked about for a whole day on the wall. If one flip chart is full, put it on the wall. And then the whole room is full. Your meeting is on the wall. Yeah. And as I said, how our brain functions and our subconscious functions, that this voice might be the loudest or the screaming thing that seems to be more important. It's completely balanced because everything is there. So you can just look and gallery walk the room and you have it all there. And it's not complex anymore because it's sorted, it's well framed, and it's all there. Nothing is lost. So the complexity is basically managed and embraced, and it creates better solutions.
Right. So it's like, because complexity often elicits these ideas of chaos, which is not exactly the same thing, but at least in our heads, and that if we have a linear approach, we can't really wrap our minds around what has priority or what, or whether things get lost or not. But also the great interdependence that we have between, I call them clouds of problems rather than our systems of problems or systemic problems. And that it's difficult for people, if they approach it in a linear way, to get to a systemic solution also. Now, what I hear you say is that once we have the entire meeting on the wall, we can not only see everything that's in it, but also the interdependencies. And in that sense, you say it's more sorted. It's more, we won't drop the ball on anything, or we won't forget anything because it's all there. And something else that popped up for me is, and I'm wondering if this is what your clients also tell you, that as I listen to you, if it's all on the wall, it's no longer in my head. And it gives me a lot more space to think what's best for the organization or what the next step could be. Is that also an impact that it has on your clients?
I would say so, because we live in a culture, our Western culture, seemingly the linear way is the way, and the thinking is the way to look at the world, and the mental mindset and the mechanistic approach, still very present, seems to be the way to go. It's very, very, very present in organizations. That's a slice of reality, and there's different ways to look at things. There's not only the mental thinking and information-based way, but we also have more aspects than that, both as an individual and as a collective and as systems. Yeah, so there are other elements to be embraced here, and that's basically what you read in my bio. I think you said something like also able to map the intangible, energetic parts of reality or something like that. And that's basically, I include that. Yeah. So, and I, not by introducing it, but verbally but just showing it, displaying it, listening to it, and showing, as you said, the dependencies or the underlying currents of whatever it is, belief systems in the system and so on. So all of that is part of reality, and I try to include it as best as I can.
Right, right. Okay. To me, it also sounds like almost like a mindfulness exercise, because wanting to approach everything in a linear way can be exhausting, especially when dealing with complexity. So the impact could also be that it helps you to reflect more and to actually access the other ways of approaching problems and approaching solutions to where you want the organization to evolve next, or to let emerge where the organization wants or needs to go. So it could make life a little lighter for leaders to go through the visualization process with you.
And they can do it themselves, because everything I do, it's not so rocket science, because first of all, everybody listening here has been drawing as a kid. So we've done it all. But then maybe a teacher said, stop doodling while I speak, but your brain processes and learning better when you do that. Listen to me. So basically, creativity is killed through the education system or parents or system-wide beliefs that things have to look pretty and nice and aesthetic and so on. So now, if everybody takes a bold step and lets go of the belief that things have to look nice and be pretty and aesthetic, then the pathway is there that you can do it yourself. Each and every. So you take a marker, maybe nobody in the room, you do your thing, and you map your situation, or like we have just had the end of the year, 2018, we're now in 2019. Imagine at the end of 2018, you map out your past year and you connect in gratitude, and then you let it go. It does something to your system. And then you map out your vision of 2019. It does something. And as I said, it must not look pretty, because this work is not coming from arts and illustration. So let go of that belief, and you have value, create the value for yourself. And then maybe at the next step, you take this into to a colleague or a meeting and so on, so everybody can do it. And that's maybe an encouragement I want to leave with people.
Yeah. And so is this, because we've almost come to the end of our very interesting conversation, and I am just wondering, this may be the most important piece that we're talking about. So we talked about the visualization and how you facilitate that and how you work with different clients and the different examples that you gave into it. But just now you said everyone can do it. Is there a particular thing that you can offer, or something that you think is very important if everyone who's watching this wants to start leveraging the visualization approach, like you explained in our conversation today? What would that one thing be?
Yeah, I mean, I gave the example of the end of the one year into the next, but basically you can take any situation that is in a current state and wants to you wish to have it in a new state. So there's always a tension between those two states, and you can map one on one piece of paper and another one on another one, and you already created something. As I said, I'm inviting to let go of the ideas it should look pretty or be precise or something, because it's closer than you think, because you can just that you have been doodling as a kid is still somewhere in your in your whole system, in your internals, yeah, and you can actually pull it out, and you don't know that you're doing it. Actually, it needs some minutes of training, and you're actually having some fun there and creating value for yourself. Any tension between A and B can be that, or setting identifying priorities for your day. So just do it visually, and it's already there. It's basically an internal muscle that's fun to develop and to pull out. It's actually in today's world, it really works, and it's great. I'm basically inviting you to try it.
Yeah. Well, an invitation to everyone who's been watching. Mathias, we've been talking about your work that you're very passionate about facilitating the visualization process. And in our conversation, we talked about how you reinvented yourself and really took a turn into this work that called you, and that the technological environment that you worked in before was no longer suiting you, and that you wanted to go more into the visualization and facilitate organization development, and to make visual for living human systems what's going on in the system. And that there are different ways to do that, more from the outside observer, but that's the less common way of doing it. Most of the time you are either in interaction with your clients, or you let them do the process and create magic moments with them, where they become more conscious of what's actually in their system now that it's on paper. And that requires that you are open, that you listen, that you have the courage to be in the space of the unknown, not knowing what will end up on the paper, and that there is a follow-up process after that as well with your clients for them to understand, okay, if we have the visual now, what is the thing that we do next? And your encouragement for everyone is to tap into this skill that we actually all have, and that may have been lost over the years, but that we can access it again, so that it can then be shared in our teams and organizations for the betterment of our work environment, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah. So very interesting conversation. Thank you so much for being here with us in the Systemic Leadership and sharing your knowledge and experience.
Thank you, Jennifer. It was a pleasure to be here and contribute.
And to everyone who has been watching, I hope that you found it really interesting and valuable, and that you may want to try out your first own visualization of what's going on in your team or organization, as Mathias suggested. If you want to take the conversation further and listen in to what's going on in our summit, or if you want to share your learning and insight from this session, please go to our online community space. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next session. Bye-bye.